Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker. Happy Tuesday to you. It's October the 14th. This is Let's Talk Tropics. We're going to be looking at Lorenzo, which is really struggling now out in the middle part of the Atlantic. We've got another pretty strong tropical wave that's coming off the African coast and might have a chance maybe a week or so down the road. And then there's other little waves and a nor'easter that's running up the East Coast right now. So we got quite a bit to talk about here in the tropics. Fortunately, nothing is going to be affecting the Gulf Coast. I want to remind you that so far this entire hurricane season, the state of Louisiana has not been in a single cone. We've had one named storm over the southern part of the Gulf in the Bay of Campeche. That was Barry way back in the early part of the hurricane season. So it has been a very, very quiet time here locally. And the last time we didn't have any hurricanes, no hurricanes in the Gulf waters was back in 2014 and 2015. So it's been about a decade since things have been this quiet, this close to home. But as far as our numbers, Lorenzo is our 12th named storm. So 14 is a normal hurricane season. Most of the forecasts earlier in the year were calling for 16 to 18. So a little bit behind on average and a little bit behind on the forecast, but as long as we don't have anything happening along the northern Gulf Coast, that is always great news for us. Right now, we've got a lot of sunshine here in the hub city. Temperature 82 degrees, the dew point at 58, so it's nice and dry out there, hitting that sweet spot on the humidity there. Anywhere between 35 and 45%, I believe, is where the HVAC guys really want to have that humidity going when you're trying to heat or cool your home. Winds are currently out of the north-northeast at 6, pressure 30.09. So it's warm out there, but it is a bit on the dry side. And as you can see, we've got a lot of sunshine here in the Acadiana region. Dry roadways, good travel conditions. If you got the rest of the week off and get a chance to do some traveling, you're not going to have any issues east or west, at least over the next several days. And down along the beaches, looks like there's a lot of people at Orange Beach this week enjoying some nice weather there. Looks like a pelican maybe flying by too. But we've got some really pretty conditions that are there over in Orange Beach. Dauphin Island is looking good. The seas are a little bit rough, a little choppy here and there, a few little white caps, but doesn't look like it's too bad. And as we work our way westward over toward Cocodrie, plenty of sunshine there. And then over around Galveston Bay, we're in good shape too. So really a beautiful ridge of high pressure that's in control. So that's going to keep our winds more easterly through the day today, and those seas will be running about 1 to 2 feet. Stronger winds out here in the middle and southern part of the Gulf waters. Again, that's on the bottom of that ridge of high pressure, and as that ridge stays in control, we're not going to be seeing any rainfall out in the region. You can kind of pick up where the ridge is here. Right there over Louisiana, you've got more of that easterly wind coming in from the south, and then that north and then a westerly wind here on the northern side. So you got that big ridge of high pressures there, and that is really just going to prevent anything from coming in. We've got a frontal boundary here, and that's going to keep some big thunderstorms and some heavy downpours going out in the far western part of the Caribbean. But the rest of the Gulf is very, very quiet. We have nothing to worry about as far as the Gulf waters. Now, a little bit farther to the south, you do have this convection that's out over here in the western part of the Caribbean. This is not tropical in nature. There's a trough in place. You got some divergence in the upper levels, and you got a bit of a frontal boundary that's still down here. That's going to push a little bit farther to the south across Cuba into the western part of the Caribbean, and that is going to keep things a little bit unsettled here over the western part of the Caribbean. Again, nothing tropical is expected to develop, but it is going to continue to keep some moderate to heavy rains over parts of Nicaragua, Honduras, and then eventually over toward Belize and Guatemala and the Yucatan Peninsula. Meanwhile, we've also got another tropical wave that's out here over the far western Atlantic, now trying to cross its way into the Caribbean. It is not showing any signs of circulation or any signs of organization. Up here is Tropical Storm Lorenzo, which we'll focus on a little bit later on. And then here along the East Coast, we have that low pressure area that was near the Carolinas. That is now moving off toward the northeast, and an upper trough is going to be digging as well. And that will get a fairly significant low pressure area, what we call a nor'easter there, along the northeastern coast, Atlantic Ocean. Things can get pretty rough, and they've had a lot of coastal flooding along the East Coast. The rest of the tropical Atlantic, again, this is Lorenzo here, and then we got a couple of tropical waves. This one right here is one I want to kind of focus on a little bit later on, as I think that's going to take a little more of a southern track and could possibly work its way into the southern part of the Caribbean in a little over a week. So that's all the games that we got out there. You got your nor'easter up here to the north, and then you got a tropical wave, another tropical wave, another tropical wave, and then, of course, Lorenzo is our only named storm that we have out there. And we don't have anything that's expected to develop, according to the National Hurricane Center, over the next several days, although I would watch for maybe one of those little yellow blobs to come out there over the far eastern Atlantic with that next tropical wave. So let's get started here on Lorenzo, and Lorenzo really has been struggling. There's a lot of wind shear, a big trough that's off toward the northwest of it. And so far, we've seen a lot of the convection kind of blowing off to the east of where the center of circulation is here, although in the last several hours, we're getting a little bit of a blow up of convection closer to the center. Again, it's still going to be battling some really hostile conditions out there. So the forecast does not include a lot of strengthening. It dropped down to 45 miles per hour. It was 60 miles per hour earlier in the morning. We'll have to see if that drops off again. There's some little fluctuations here and there in the forecast, but it isn't looking to be very strong over the next couple of days, maybe 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. This is kind of an interesting one. It's going to round the ridge of a high pressure, and then that high is going to start to sink a little bit farther to the south, which might give it the opportunity to do this loop around and come back at itself. That happens pretty often out in the central part of the Atlantic, but usually when you have systems like this, they don't get that strong, and the Tropical Storm Lorenzo intensity model forecast, just about everything here keeps it at tropical storm status or lower. None of the models go up into the hurricane status. So that's, again, reason why we're not expecting to see anything there. Now, remember, we've got the tropical weather outlook for 7 days there. But when we go out 2 and 3 weeks, and again, this is going to get updated a little bit later this afternoon, so I'll be able to bring you the new one tomorrow. But it does keep things a little active. Remember, we were talking about that tropical wave coming off Africa that could reach parts of the Caribbean sometime next week, and also the Central American gyre is really kind of more active. It looks like it's a little more active on the Pacific side, where we've had a few other systems over the last week or so, but even in week 3, it does keep that particular area a little bit busy. So when we get the new update, I'll have that for you tomorrow, and we'll actually be going into the first week of November, so we're getting into the last month of the hurricane season on some of our forecasts. We do have very warm waters, and again, there still is a concern if anything were to move into parts of the Caribbean and have some decent upper-level conditions, because the water temperatures are so incredibly warm there over parts of the Caribbean. And not only is that water warm at the surface, but it also goes pretty deep here, especially the western part of the Caribbean and the southern Gulf. So any tropical systems, we really want that to avoid those particular areas, because that's really where the ripe conditions are for a tropical system to intensify fairly quickly, especially if it's got a low wind shear environment. And we are seeing a little bit of a low wind shear environment here across much of the Caribbean right now. Notice where Lorenzo is over here. You've got wind shear to the north. You got wind shear coming in from the southwest. So it's going to have a pretty hard time as it starts to make its turn a little bit farther to the north and then kick its way back out to the east. But farther down the road, this other tropical wave that's coming off the African coast looks like it's going to take more of a southern track, really far to the south too. So again, it might not make it into the Caribbean. What's left of that wave might move into northern parts of South America, Trinidad, Tobago, or the southern part of the Caribbean. So we'll watch that, but at this point, it's not anything to be really concerned about. So as we get into the different models here, and we'll start with the Euro. And again, yesterday, the Euro wasn't too excited about what Lorenzo was doing. And today, as you can see, it really isn't showing a whole lot of action here as it moves off toward the northeast and then maybe starts to curve its way a little bit farther back toward the south. You see a big, huge push of dry air here over the western part of the Atlantic, which would suppress anything there near the Bahamas and across the northern part of the Caribbean. But also that ridge of high pressure that's over here is sinking a little bit farther to the south. Watch as we go here into the early part of next week. And as that sinks to the south, you see more of the moisture here associated with some of those tropical waves kind of working a little bit farther toward the south. So that is something we'll be keeping an eye on. But as we go out 10 days, good news is it does look a little bit moist here across the Gulf waters, but we're not seeing any active systems here over the next 10 days or so. Let's get into the GFS. And again, GFS yesterday wasn't too excited about Lorenzo, and today it kind of has it fizzling here by the time we reach Thursday or Friday, and then it kind of wraps. See how it wraps around that ridge of high pressure and then tries to scoot its way a little bit farther back toward the west. At this point, it doesn't look like it would reorganize. Again, as we get into the early part of next week, got a big front here across the southeastern U.S., which would drive a lot of dry air down into the Gulf, and again, should be able to block anything from coming in. But again, we see a little bit of a low that's down here over parts of the Caribbean. We'll watch out for this. This is a week from Saturday, so this is on the 25th of October. And then you see it kind of fester there. Unfortunately, it wants to fester in that place that's a little bit more conducive for tropical development. But again, we're going way far out here. We're going out beyond that 10-day period. In fact, we're all the way out to Monday, the 27th. So we're going out almost 2 weeks there. And let's go ahead and move in on the Canadian. The Canadian model's been kind of interesting here over the last couple of days. I can't say that it's the most trustworthy of all of the models. Let me see if I can get this thing to drag its way back toward the beginning here and see if I can get the Canadian model to pull up. There we go. And we can see that real quick, just kind of point out where Lorenzo is down here. And again, the Canadian has it kind of fizzle out too as it moves off toward the north. And then you see that next tropical wave that's kind of working its way here over toward the Caribbean. This is on Saturday of this week. And that low kind of continues to drift off toward the west, but you see it intensify a little bit more as it reaches the eastern part of the Caribbean. And the track of this low is a little bit farther to the north than some of the other computer models are showing, but it does have a persistent low over the western part of the Caribbean, even going out to about 10 days. So the Canadian model is a little bit more robust when it comes to any development of that tropical wave. We'll finish off with the Icon, which only goes out 7 days, so you don't have quite the lengthy window, but you see that huge ridge of high pressure here, which would drag any tropical waves way down toward the south, going out to the next week or so. But at least at this point, it doesn't look like there's anything too exciting kind of drifting across the Atlantic. Maybe a little bit of a low here, again, about 7 days from now. So that's the tropical wave we'll just continue to watch as it continues to move off toward the west. We'll kind of finish off here with the AI models and just kind of let it run through. And you see Lorenzo doesn't last very long. And then you do start to see at least some of this tropical wave action here over the southern part of the Caribbean, or the southern Atlantic, and then that starts to move into the Caribbean Sea. But that is not the Google AI models. That's some of the other models that we're able to pull up here, which includes the Euro model and some of the high-resolution ensemble models. WeatherNet is in there as well. But you can see there's really not a lot until you get way down the road, maybe about a week to 10 days. It looks like there might be something trying to fester over parts of the Caribbean. But I will say, as we get toward the latter part of October, it is a lot harder for a lot of these tropical systems, even in this part of the world, to work their way toward us. Most of the time, they just kind of curve and go out like that because you get those pattern changes, you get those big fronts that start to come off the lower 48. So good news is Louisiana's never been hit by a hurricane during the month of November, but we have had a couple of hurricanes at the very end of October, and a couple of tropical storms come pretty close to Louisiana during the month of November. So we are getting into the home stretch, and again, we are roughly halfway across October, and you see that that line really starts to dip down as we get toward November, and usually we can let our guard down once we cross November 1st. But so far, we've had 12 named storms. The average is 14. And that 12th storm coming, just a couple of days, pretty much on schedule. We had Lorenzo that formed, day before yesterday? No, yesterday. So that was just a couple of days late. We're about halfway between October 11th and the 25th. Notice, though, when it comes to hurricanes, we are pretty far behind schedule, and we have already had 3 major hurricanes, so we're ahead of schedule on that. So hopefully we don't have too much more out there. 13 to 14 is what you were looking at as an average season. But remember, some of the forecasts earlier in the season were calling for 16 to 18 storms. So we're in the ballpark, but the forecasts are falling a little bit short this year, which I'm one of those people who's not really complaining, because having busy season, especially like 2020 was, where we had multiple tropical storms and hurricanes come across the Gulf and affect Louisiana. as you all know, it does get a little bit exhausting to have to be dealing with all that stress. Even with a near miss, it does really kind of weigh on you if you have a really, really busy hurricane season like that. But this year, so far, we've been okay, and if we can get through the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think we'll get through relatively unscathed on our 2025 hurricane season. Well, I hope you enjoy the show. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also turn on those notifications. And remember, you can hear my forecasts on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And on certain days, I'm over in Baton Rouge at WBRZ Channel 2. I'll be off for the rest of this week, but I'll be there on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday mornings. We have a 10 o'clock in the morning show on Saturday, 9 o'clock on Sunday, and 5 a.m. on Monday morning. Also, don't forget to follow my social media pages. I'll put a few updates on Lorenzo over the next couple of days, and thanks to everyone who's already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Have yourself a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for Acadiana Weather Today.